Let's talk about Baldur's Gate 3. First off, I love the customization and the freedom of choices that the player gets. It's absolutely insane. You can do almost anything you can imagine when you enter the game, whether it's kill all the NPCs, you can save them. There are options that are kind of forced. For example, when you enter the Druid's Grove, you have to fight the goblins. There's no siding with them or anything. But later on, you can side with them if you want. And I love that. I love the fact you can choose to be the bad guy, or you can choose to save innocent people, or whatever you want can imagine. It lets you do that. And one of my favorite parts and favorite moments I've had so far playing it is there is a underground dungeon filled with spiders, and they have something called a phase spider, which is basically a teleporting spider. So one of my favorite things that I really wanted to do was raise the dead, because in the Underdark, where this cave could lead you if you play your cards right, is you can enter a mushroom colony filled with sentient mushrooms and meet a guy. He'll join your party and he will resurrect people. Well, I say people, I meant monstrosities. They specifically have to be in the monstrosities category, or monstrous. What I did was I shrank down the Monarch phase spider, which is basically the boss for that dungeon. Then I used Thundering Wave and knocked her into the Underdark. That was amazing. I wasn't actually sure I can do that. Instantly killed her. If I had knew I could have done that, I would have done that from the beginning, because this boss was so annoying. It had teleporting every turn, multi attacks with poison, and it was really fun to know that I could do that. It took me a few attempts, mind you. I had to save scum, because the majority of my party had already been taken out. But that is by far one of my favorite aspects of the game and that I've come across. The freedom of so many different options that you can do when you fight a boss. And honestly, I really hope they keep this up, because what you could do if you do kill the boss like that is you could go into the Underdark, meet the guy in the mushroom colony that lets you raise monsters that I've heard dead, and then you can find a spot where you knock the spider in and have full control. You have full control over all of its moves. Everything that used to bullshit you during the fight, you could use on everybody else now in there. The issue is, though, once it's dead, it's dead. You can't revive it after a first revive, but it's so good with teleportation. I really hope they implement riding, also, but I don't think they'll do that, even if you could, because that might be too complex of a thing to include in the game. One of the things I really hope they do include in the game, however, is there is a character you meet in the prologue named Us. It's an intellect devourer, basically a brain with four legs. And what their species can do is they have a trait called Devour Intellect, which basically renders this character dumb. It devours their intellect stat, their intelligence stat. So what is supposed to happen is that after you get it low enough, the Intellect Devourer switches places. So that's what I hope they let you keep, because that would be insane to have an Intellect Devourer in your party and then to have them be capable of actually taking over an NPC and using that NPC during your playthrough. The idea of using characters with powers that don't have any, I want to say, a way for the character to obtain them. That's what I really love about this game, because it has allowed you to do those kind of things. And not many games have that. Even Skyrim. Skyrim has a similar thing where you can resurrect dead boss monsters, but only with certain spells for balancing reasons. But I really hope they do implement the Intellect Devour trait. A way to balance it would obviously be the no leveling, so someone in the prologue can't get any levels later. And even if they do implement leveling, one of the issues is class levels, because you can't have a class level on a normal boss character, because the way it's balanced is that they don't have class levels. Class levels add a bunch of things, including their class features, that could totally break the balance of the game if you were to combine them with certain bosses' innate abilities. Honestly, I hope I really hope they do have something like this. But I'm not gonna get my hopes up too much for it because I know it's gonna be a balancing nightmare for them. But honestly, the idea is there, the opportunity to do it is there, and they have a lot of intellectual hours. And there are very good reason why you're playing through the game right now and you can't do this, and they can't do it to you. It's because they're weakened. At first, you meet one, and he's a newborn, so obviously he probably hasn't matured enough to be capable of using it. And then after the ship crashes, like while you're on the ship, however, you're treated as an ally. But after it crashes, you're treated as an enemy. But they're all injured, so they can't use their abilities to their fullest. Like you'll notice, none of them use their actual psychic attacks; they only use their physical attacks. So I really hope they do implement this feature, and I really hope the player can have access to it because that would be amazing. One of the things I want to mention, though, however, is the fact that the druid using the Illid powers could turn into one, and I don't know how they're going to balance that because actually, no, that would make sense to balance because the druid would be leveling up, not at the NPC they're controlling. So you could just have a druid control a boss monster as one, and then later on, he levels up, but not the character he's controlling. So that would be a pretty good way to balance it, considering the fact that fairly obviously you're not going to have the power of the druid transfer over. The way it works is that you have full control over the character you are controlling, but you don't have access to your abilities. So it's going to be interesting to see how they work with that. And I really hope that the game continues to improve, and I really like how it's currently progressing. Um, After this, I'm gonna have a story about my latest playthrough. I had issues recording, as you can see with the footage. My laptop isn't the greatest for running the game, so obviously, don't take what you're seeing on screen as the final product or even as it at its best. But I really do love the game, despite all the faults I have playing it. But I really hope you guys do enjoy it. This is a story about how my current playthrough, and the character I'm currently using. This is actually my first time role playing one instead of going with the most optimized route. And I really hope you guys enjoy it. This is the story of John. I had an error with caps lock when I was writing his name, so his name is lowercase j, uppercase A-O-H-N. He was a halfling street urchin from Baldur's Gate, and he had always dreamed of one day gaining his freedom, and he hoped by becoming a druid through nature he could obtain freedom just like all the animals he would see as he'd always wander the streets. In the city, he unfortunately, during the attack of the Nautiloids, he was kidnapped, and as a result, he had a mind flare implant a parasite into his eye. He finally had awoken after this nightmarish experience, only to discover the ship was in ruin. After which, he tries to escape. He hears the call of what he thinks is a person, only to discover that it appears to be a brain, and the head of the person appears to have been cut open, exposing it. He speaks to it, and it tells him to free it. And after freeing it, he realizes an opportunity and takes it to cripple the brain in case it would ever to grow stronger and may betray him. They then proceed to go to the helm, where they meet a Gith. This Gith, it tries to kill him at first, but once they realize they're in the same boat, they continue to press forward, after which they eventually reach the room just before the helm. After looting and killing a bunch of Devilkin on the way, he decides it's to save the half-elf currently located inside of a pod. Upon noticing an intellect devourer walking through the back room, he follows it, only to notice a larger pod containing a girl. He walks to the back of the room, notices a corpse, and raids the poor person. After witnessing a bunch of people all in delusion over what's happening, he realized that this person must have been one of them in order to understand why she had so many objects on her of such value. He then proceeds to touch the console located in that back room, only to realize that those parasites, they're going to turn them into those monsters, those alien species that captured them. Out of fear and hoping that one day he'll can save himself, he presses forward. He saves the half-elf. Then he learns his name Shadowheart. They then proceed to the next room. He convinces his Shadowheart and the gift named Lae'zel to proceed without him as he prepares the counterattack for any pursuers they may have. After a long and difficult battle, the intellect of our companion they had named us, Lae'zel, and Shadowheart all, all fought to the bitter end. As a result, the Mind Flayer is dead, the commander is knocked out, us is dead, and Lae'zel is unconscious. Now, after setting up all the traps, John proceeds to enter and go to the console. But not before raiding a few things. Then, and after awakening Lae'zel, after Shadowheart awakens Lae'zel, Lae'zel lands the finishing blow of killing their commander, upon which two more devil can appear. Lae'zel wastes no time and destroys the mysterious barrels that John had left by the entrance, resulting in both of them dying. John, before reaching the alien console, turns back and raids their bodies as well. After reaching the console, John decides that it's time, and then proceeds to activate the console. This results in them teleporting to a shore, unknown to him or anyone else. Thus, John had awakened his new power, and decides to follow down his path and become one with nature in his own way, by taking the form of animals. So, along the path, as that was clear to him on the shore, he meets Shadowheart. He then proceeds to try and steal what he thinks is a magical object in her possession, only for her to wake up. John confesses that he was in fact trying to steal it. Shadowheart reluctantly accepts his apology and decides if they should journey together. As a result, both of them team up and proceed down the path. After coming across a locked door, he then turns around and falls through the ruins of the ship, only to discover three more of these intellect devour monsters. They are injured, so him and Shadowheart dispatch them. After traveling for a fair bit, they run across a Astarian, an elf. He then proceeds to hold down John, and only at knife point asks him questions, because he suspected that they both are with the Mind Flayers in their kidnapping attempt. After clearing up, John accepts Astarian's apology and reluctantly decides to allow him to join them. After which, they come across a Mind Flayer and fishermen digging him out. John, concerned about the fishermen, proceeds to tell them to stop. He was unconvinced. He was unable to convince them, and they proceed to attack him. As a result, John yells out to Shadowheart to attack the Mind Flayer in hopes of freeing them. After which, John then explains to them what happened, and they explain how they were being controlled, and how they thought they were freeing their loved ones. After a few questions with them, they left. John now realizes he's a fair bit away from Baldur's Gate, and that unfortunately, there's no way that he can leave the island as of yet. This is how we're going to end for today. I did have a full script up until the Goblin Priest, but I'll be saving that because I don't have enough footage for that. So I hope you enjoyed it, and that's it. Good night.